Let's talk about some names that should replace Nick Saban at Alabama, but also mention a few names that should absolutely go nowhere near this job opening. For me, let's start at number one in terms of the guy that should be the top of the list for Greg Byrne, Alabama AD, who we should hire. Number one call should be to Oregon coach Dan Lanning. He, to me, by far is the most qualified and I think the perfect fit for this job. He is someone that knows Alabama. He was there for 1 year as a GA back in 2015. He is someone that knows the SEC and knows how to win in the SEC, was on Kirby Smart's staff, who's basically Nick Saban Jr., right? So he's on that staff for 4 years, learned what it takes to be a champion, was the defensive coordinator on the 2021 Georgia national title team, and then he went to Oregon, and the Ducks, I would say in the 2 years Lanning has been there, do look like an SEC team, right? They're big on the lines, they're physical. Lanning has done a good job developing players, done a good job in the transfer portal, getting Bo Nix there, developing him to be one of the best college quarterbacks for the last 2 seasons. After 3 up and down years at Auburn, has done a good job with NIL and managing the resources that Oregon has at their disposal. That's an advantage over others. Like, he checks every box. Everything you could want from a head coach that is realistic for Alabama to hire, Dan Lanning's the guy. He is number one. And so for me, that's who Alabama should call first. Dan Lanning, get him on the line, get him to Tuscaloosa. If he says no, he's not interested. The second call I would make is to Kalen DeBoer. Now, there's no ties with DeBoer to Alabama or the SEC. Here's why for me, that shouldn't matter. The guy wins. The first thing you can say about Kalen DeBoer as a coach, but really as a former player, as a person, he's a winner. He flat out wins anywhere and everywhere he goes. Washington, Fresno State, NAIA, does not matter. The guy wins and he wins big. Year 2, he took Washington to the national championship game. He's developed talent similar to Dan Lanning. He is a tremendous offensive mind, super creative. This is a guy that checks every box. By the way, his offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb, was someone that Nick Saban tried to hire last year before settling on Tommy Rees. So Saban at least already respects the coaching hires that DeBoer has made, so much so he tried to steal them away from him. And think about that. Think about how good DeBoer is of a coach that Grubb said no to Saban and stuck with Kalen at Washington. That should speak volumes. So even though there's no SEC or Alabama tie to Kalen, you are bringing in a true outsider. The guy wins. Saban recognized that. I think everyone in college football recognizes that. I would absolutely make the call and would not be afraid to bring Kalen DeBoer to town. Let's talk about a few names Alabama should not hire. Number one is Dabo Swinney. I don't think Dabo Swinney is a good fit for Bama, or should say, nor do I think Dabo should go to Bama. Let's look at it from Alabama's perspective first. I don't think Alabama could take the risk of bringing in Dabo Swinney. I think the game is passing by. The Dabo Swinney that won national titles in 2016 and 2018 is not the same Dabo Swinney right now that's coaching Clemson in 2023. I think for me, the game has passed it by. We could talk about NIL. We could talk about transfer portal. Those are 2 problems that I think have led partially to the decline of Clemson. Also, though, that's not talked about as much, that's a real problem, is lack of player development. We were DJ Uiagalelei, big time prospect, was supposed to be Deshaun to Trevor to DJ. And the run of elite quarterbacks for the Tigers was supposed to continue. DJ flamed out. And the coaching staff and everyone around the university blamed it on DJ. He's not good. That's the reason why we're losing. Oh, but Cade Klubnik, he's the truth. He's what's going to lead us back to the promised land. And what's happened in the 2 years Klubnik's been there? Not a lot. Not a lot of good play. It's been more the same. Is it that DJ and Klubnik stink? Or is it that they're not being developed properly? I would go with the latter. on that end. Player development has been an issue, not just at quarterback, but other positions as well. Clemson has not gotten these good players to continue to get better. And part of that is bad coordinator hires. Dabo, in losing his longtime OC, losing his longtime DC, has not done a good job at filling those hires with excellent coordinators. That's been a problem. And if you look at Alabama, what Nick Saban has done, one of the reasons why he's been so dominant is the fact that he has nailed his coordinator hire year after year. There's been a lot of churn and a lot of one and dones. Offense coordinator, defense coordinator, special teams coordinator, and Saban's nailed every hire. So Dabo struggles hiring coordinators, struggles developing players. I don't think if you're Alabama, that's a risk you want to take, or think that all of a sudden he's going to revert back to his national championship ways. The game to me has passed Dabo by. He is not the guy that's going to continue the excellence Nick Saban has built for the last 15 years. But on the other side, I don't think Dabo should want the Alabama job. I know he played there, right? So it's like going home to your alma mater. But think about this from a legacy perspective. Look at Jimbo Fisher. Highly respected at Florida State. Won a national title. Was thought to be the finishing piece for Texas A&M, so much so they paid him a boatload of money, not once but twice, to come there and then to stay because they were so convinced he was one of the best coaches in college football and he was the right guy to lead them to win a national title. And what happened? He obviously flamed out. But now we view Jimbo Fisher as a totally different coach. Had a great run at Florida State. Again, is a national champion. But because of how things went in the most recent tenure with the Aggies, now he is viewed as an outcast, as an idiot, as a bad coach. Jimbo's legacy took a hit for what happened in College Station. If you're Dabo, you've won 2 national titles. You go to Alabama and have nowhere near the success that Saban has. You're 8-4, 9-3 every single year. Your legacy is taking a hit. How you're viewed as a coach is going down a notch because you were unable to continue what I think is an impossible task of continuing the excellence and dominance Nick Saban has done for 15 years. No one is coming in and keeping that dominance going. But with that said, that does not mean that fans, don't expect that to happen. It's not like the media is going to give Dabo a break if he's going 8-4 and can't get over the hump and can't win playoff games and can't win a national title. His legacy is going to take a hit. So if you're Dabo, I think you're honestly better off staying at Clemson, staying in an easier conference where you'll make the playoff every single year in the ACC and ride it out. Maybe win a third, but your legacy is not going to take a hit if you stay at Clemson and not win versus the way if you go to Alabama and not win. So I don't think the Alabama job makes sense for either Alabama or Dabo's perspective or case, I should say, in this situation. I don't think it makes sense for either side to make this happen. That's why I would say no to Dabo. I would say no to Lane Kiffin. I would not trust Lane Kiffin to be my head coach at Alabama and succeed Saban, in part because he just can't win the big game. He is a guy that is fun, that is a great personality, that fits well at Ole Miss for a school that's not had a lot of success. The pressure is low. I mean, they just won 11 games for the first time in 118 years for the Rebels. He is a god on that campus. He goes to Alabama. Now, all of a sudden, he is under the microscope. And you go 11-1, but not win the SEC, get bounced in the second round of the playoff, you're getting criticized. That's a down year. The expectations are sky high and impossible. And for a guy that is always in the biggest games, had his team unprepared and not ready to play and blown out in a lot of these big games against Alabama, against Georgia, if I'm Alabama, I don't feel like Kiffin's the answer. I think I could do better. Lane, I think, is perfect for where he is at Ole Miss. I wouldn't trust him if I was Alabama to have him come in and expect to pick up where Nick Saban left off. One more coach I don't think would be a good hire or good fit whatsoever. Deion Sanders. I mean, that's the worst hire Alabama can make. In this entire cycle, the worst hire they could make is Deion Sanders. He's not a good coach. He's all pomp, he's all circumstance, no substance. That works to Colorado where they need attention because they don't have any. Alabama's got the attention. They don't need that. They need a good coach who knows what he's doing, who can make good coordinator hires, who can make good in-game and in-season adjustments. Deion swings and misses on all those. Can't do any of them. Look at Colorado this year, 4-8. But look at how they played. One of the most penalized teams in the country. Undisciplined. Play calling on both sides of the ball was very questionable at best, and changes were made that didn't do anything. Deion didn't know what to do. So I think that's not realistic. I don't think he's actually going to be considered for the job. That would easily be the worst hire Alabama can make in bringing Deion Sanders to town. Two names that I think would be good fits but will not come to Alabama. Brian Daboll, DeMeco Ryans. I think both are going to stay where they are. Brian Daboll at the Giants, I think, is more of an NFL guy. And even though he's at Alabama for a little bit, won a national title, I don't think he's going to jump back to college. I think he's happy as an NFL head coach. DeMeco Ryans, I think he has more of a pull to come back to Tuscaloosa. But why would he leave Houston right now? You have the division winner right now. You have a home playoff game this upcoming weekend. You got a great young quarterback in C.J. Stroud. Why would you leave what you got? Why would you leave what is a very bright future for, look, Alabama's a great job. It's a great job. There's a lot of pressure. And you got something built right now in Houston that's sustainable. I don't think it makes sense to blow that up and walk away from it to go to your alma mater. That's a name that's going to be thrown out there. I don't think, though, it's realistic. One other name I want to throw out, and that's, I would say, a tier 2 candidate. Like that would go, that should be offered the job if Dan Lanning and Kalen DeBoer, who for me are tier 1 candidates, if they both say no. Someone with connections to the university, that's a good college football head coach, that has now been starting to become a proven winner, Steve Sarkisian. Lanning says no, DeBoer says no, I'm calling Sark. Option number 3. What he's done at Texas has been incredible. He's made them a true contender for the first time since the Mac Brown days. They're not frauds, like Sam Ehlinger tried to make you believe they're contenders. Frauds. He's made them true contenders. He has improved as a coach. Alabama should know that firsthand. That 2022 game in which Sark coached versus that 2023 game were night and day from coaching philosophies. Sark coached scared and not to lose in 2022 at home against Alabama. 2023, they went into Tuscaloosa confident and aggressive. He learned from one year to the next what it takes to win a big game. Got Texas to the playoff. Played well against Washington. Final sequence, final few plays, which pretend those didn't happen for a second. But Sark has grown as a coach, is a good offensive mind, very creative. You obviously saw that at Alabama when he was there as the OC with that historic 2020 offense that was humming when he was calling the plays. I would absolutely call Sark, and he's number 3 on my list. I would say a tier 2 candidate behind Lanning and behind DeBoer. Sark is absolutely a name that should be on the list and should be high on the list for Alabama to replace Nick Saban. So my number 1 candidate, it's Dan Lanning at Oregon. Got the ties, winner, knows the SEC rigors. I think that's a perfect guy for the job. He says no, Kalen DeBoer. Number 3 for me is Steve Sarkisian. A few names I would not give the job to. Dabo Swinney, Lane Kiffin. One last name here we have not mentioned so far. Kirby Smart. We have not mentioned him because I don't think it's realistic. I don't see the reason Kirby would leave Georgia to go to Alabama. The guy has built a legitimate now culture and is the closest thing to the Alabama dynasty we have seen. 2 titles last 3 years. He has built Georgia in the same identity that Saban built Alabama in. He's got the number one recruiting class coming into town in 2024 as well. Why would he leave? He graduated from Georgia. It's not like he's going to coach his alma mater like Dabo would, for example, or D'Amico Ryans would. Guy played at Georgia. He is now the head coach at Georgia. Why would he leave the Bulldogs to go to the Tide? We haven't talked about Kirby up to this point. It's not realistic. There is 0.0% chance Kirby leaves Georgia to go back to Alabama. Lanning, DeBoer, Sark. One of those three guys will be the next Alabama head coach.